If you do not want any spoilers on the round of 8 or anything before that in the ASL Season 20, close this video out, because we're going to be doing a quick review of what's to come here in the ASL round of 4. I'm going to scroll up to reveal the bracket here. We've got, for the semifinals, best of 7s, by the way, Barracks versus Snow and Soma versus Bizu. So, real quick, this has been one of the most unusual ASLs ever. The games have been good. And by the way, not all ASL seasons are as good as... They're not all the same. We definitely have some that are better than others. This one has been a whole season of massive upsets. All the way into a lot of the group section. We had Sulky knocked out, so he cannot win a 5th ASL. Rush in the same group was wiped as well, which is kind of insane. He's the guy that's been the closest to winning ASL several times as a Terran. Hasn't quite gotten there. No Queen. Jaedong Sharp were eliminated in Group C. And even Light was knocked out. I know I'm skipping over some names, but this is a lot of really good players that were not in the round of 8. I mean, about half of these guys that I'm looking at that have been eliminated, you would expect to see in the round of 8. And then we've had some people that have advanced that, I think it's not something a lot of people were expecting. As an example, Barracks here. And this is, by the way, no disrespect to Barracks. He's a great player. He's played really well this season. I just would not... If you told me that there was one Terran player that would be in the round of 4 and I had to guess who it was, I don't know how many guesses I would have made before I would finally have gone to Barracks. So that's insane. I mean, no Rush, no Light, even like Royal or somebody, not in this position. We did end up with a small number of Protosses early on, but they were easily the best Protosses that we have. And so it turned out to be a very Protoss-heavy quarterfinals here. We ended up with Mini, Snow, Best, and Bizu. Surprisingly, Mini did not end up beating Barracks, which, I don't know. I'm not always that confident about matches I cast as far as who's going to take it. I was pretty confident that Mini would easily beat Barracks, but he did not end up being able to pull it off. So we're going to see what happens here. Snow versus Effort was really exciting, but again, Snow, this is someone we've also been waiting to kind of win an ASL, and he's looked extremely strong, and a lot of times he looks like the best Protoss in the whole world, but, PVZ has been a bit of a hurdle for him in the past. So him beating Effort is huge. And Snow versus Barracks, I'm going to say this again. For this specific match, I think that Snow is supposed to take this. Snow is still the best PVT ever. Not just right now, ever. And I rarely talk like that. We've never seen anybody that is just so unstoppable in this matchup, with Reavers or without Reavers. He seems to be able to know exactly how to exploit the ebb and flow of a Terran player. And beyond that, his control in fights is just too good. I do feel like a lot of times in PvT, there's two parts to the game that you have to really master, and one is figuring out the limitations of the Terran at any given point in time. Mech functions in a very weird way. Everybody's so good at mech, it's easy to forget that this was like a really hard, difficult thing for us all to figure out, was how to incorporate mech and then do it right in the game. Initially, in like the first year of StarCraft, everybody thought that Terran couldn't beat Protoss because people were making Marines. And even when, Brood War came out, people were making medics, and Dragoons would just kill you. But mech comes with its limitations, right? You have to be very active with what you're doing. You have to be placing mines. You have to be sieging up or unsieging, depending on the fight. Things can backfire. They can blow up in your face. I think we've all seen spider mines that will be pulled into the army. But even siege tank damage being exploited by Protoss when they drop on you. So you have a bit of an immobile glass cannon army. And Snow just knows, how to slow you down, how to pick things off. He knows when to run away. And, a lot of times, I think in PvT more than any other matchup, we tend to see occasionally players miscalculate and attack into positions they can't win. I mean, from the Protoss' side, I think because observers, observer range is not an upgrade that's gotten almost ever in matches, but if it is, it's usually very late in the game. So sometimes the Protoss will see part of the army and think, oh, I can hit this, and then they end up overextending. Snow literally never does that. Like, he just seems to play the perfect game. He knows when to tech. Even though we know him for Reavers, he's had games where he goes carriers. He's great with arbiters. He's good at that speed shuttle Templar play. So he's the full picture. Now, Barracks' edge going into this is going to be that he seems to be, how do I say this? Flash has been training him and giving him builds. They seem to have this special relationship. Flash, by the way, has stepped away from StarCraft again due to issues with his wrists. I don't know the specifics of it. I think I heard that he had some screws removed from his arm, but basically he was playing again, and then like his wrist started to hurt, and so he's backed off. So I don't know when he'll come back or if he'll come back. Flash has a tendency to, I think it's been like 3 or 4 times this has happened, where he kind of announces retirement and then returns. I don't know why pros do that, but he has been one of them. But, you know, he still watches the game. He still loves the game. And so he is apparently been kind of in Barracks' ear, giving him pointers. And we do know that Flash has basically had the best build order understanding of all time. You know, him, maybe in the early days, Stork. But it seems like at this point in time, Barracks is sort of an instrument for Flash's strategies. Now, that being said, I don't know what strategy you can do that's going to be able to take on the overall capabilities of Snow. He just seems to know exactly how to punish Terran, when to lean in, when to back off. So I'm going to go with Snow for this one. But, man, if Barracks gets to the finals, that's insane. I mean, Barracks, he's always been good, but he was always, you know, when you look at, like, the round of 24, you'll see all sorts of names, and some will stand out immediately. You know, like I'm looking at this, and I see Mini over here. Of course, he's going to be moving on. Get to the round of, the round of 16. The same thing. The names are all better, but some stand out more than others. Barracks is a guy that in my head was always like a round of 24, round of 16 guy. No disrespect. Clearly now he's a round of 4 guy. So if he goes there, that's going to be huge. If Snow can get to the finals, it'll depend on who wins with Soma versus Bizu. Snow Bizu, I think it's a toss-up, maybe slightly favored for Snow, but I don't know. Maybe I take that back, actually. Bizu's very strong PvP, so like it could go either way. PvP's never been like a bad matchup for him. It'll be interesting if we have a PvP finals. I think that'll be the first PvP finals we've had since Rain and Snow. And that was a long time ago. That was like 7 years ago or something. So on to this next match we have here. This is going to be Soma versus Bizu. Now, Soma versus Best was kind of a funny interaction. You know, Soma's, I think, one of the scariest Zergs in the early game. And he knows when to counterattack. He knows when to pick his fights. And, you know, a lot of PvZ is... And I think, you know, there's always this asymmetry in non-mirror matchups where I think it's fair to say sometimes it's harder for one race than it is for the other. And then a lot of times the further the game goes, then maybe that race has a little bit more of an advantage. I do feel like in PvZ, it's tough for the Protoss early on if they're going to play a macro game. It doesn't mean that they don't have really strong moves, but a lot of PvZ is you're just trying to get to Psystorm. And then you're trying to get the rest of your tech. And the matchup works in a funny way. It's a matchup where you need, like, so many upgrades to be viable. And there's really not a lot you can do without those upgrades, right? So, like, you got to get Storm. You can't push without Dragoon range. That's not a thing. You can't... the Zealots without the speed upgrade, if you overextend, you're dead. And, of course, you need to have those upgrades... out of the Forge, or, you know, there's not a whole lot you can do. So those can never be bypassed. So Soma's, I think, one of the strongest players pre-Psystorm. I think he's got some of the best Hydra busts in the game. And, you know, if you go back and look at the Soma Best games, it was a weirder series, I would say, than many of the other matches we had. They just didn't pan out the way I think a lot of people expected. But it was undeniable that Soma had the upper hand. And, you know, Best, who I think... a lot of times looks like a great player. He's not always that consistent in ASLs. So Soma managed to get the upper hand. Bizu versus Larva. You know, Larva was another guy we didn't know. We didn't know how far he would get in this ASL. You got to remember, he's a guy that's got a massive YouTube. He's got a massive stream. He does a lot of non-StarCraft related content. I know he's been doing like a lot of MMA stuff lately and fitness stuff. It's kind of similar to Rain. Rain's got a big YouTube. Rain does like a lot of just kind of let's play like streams. Like he does a whole bunch of varieties, different variety games basically. So he's not always active, but you know he's going to be good when he shows up. Same thing with Larva here. Larva definitely knows how to plan out a match, but you could see in the best of 7 that these guys had, Bizu's just too strong at this matchup overall. Like, he's just a guy that's very hard to control. He knows how to push. He knows how to tech up. And out of all the Protosses that we've had, he's the guy that's the most in the Zerg's face. Like, out of all the PvZs we've seen, and look, I think Snow and Mini are also pretty strong at being aggressive, but not like Bizu. And, you know, the way he plays is it's a little bit older, like older looking, I should say, but it still works. And he's the best at this in the whole world. His Corsairs are always moving on the map. They're always killing Overlords. He knows exactly when to attack with the Zealots and the Corsairs at the same time and do that damage. He seems to be more inclined to get +1 air weapons in games where there's not mutas made, I've seen. I know he has one build where he just like always goes +1 air, +1 ground. But he's a really strong player. So he just ran over Larva, very one-sided series. But Bizu versus Soma, there's been 2 different times these guys have played in the ASL, and honestly, they're some of the best PvZs ever. They're super exciting. Because I think Bizu's got some of the strongest early game PvZ. I think it's why historically he's been looked at as the best PvZ player. And I think some people could argue there are other players who are maybe a little bit better or produce better results now, but he's so good at making the early game hard that it almost flips the way that we look at the matchup. Like I was saying earlier, it's kind of hard for Protoss to kind of get started up in PvZ, but you know, the mid game, once you're pushing and you've got Storm, you've got Observers, and you've got Dragoon range, the game's a lot smoother, basically. Although I think if you go into a very, very late game, that gets very difficult again. Go back and watch the Soma Bizu matches if you want something to enjoy until we get to this match, because those are some of the best PvZs I've ever casted. I don't know who takes this. It's going to be a crazy match. This might be the best match of this ASL, and we've had a lot of good ones. So I'm very much so looking forward to this. And yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of different finals we could have. I welcome the PvP if we do get that. There is a world where it's Barracks Soma, which again, just I think isn't a finals anybody was imagining. Not now. But you can really see with what we've got here for this ASL that the landscape has changed quite a bit as far as who's on top. Unless we go to like next year in season 21 and it's back to like the same people we've always been casting that are up here. Because, you know, sometimes this happens in tournaments where we just get an unusual draw and then it goes back to what we're used to. But, you know, the biggest thing overall for this season, besides the fact that, you know, Sulky has been eliminated early on and his reign of dominance has finally ended. 4 ASLs, by the way. I mean, that's insane. I don't know if we're going to see that again, or at least not for a long time. The other thing is just that Flash isn't here. For this season. I don't know if he's going to be back. I imagine he will be in a year or 2. I think StarCraft's a hard game to walk away from. I think we can all agree. We're all here for a reason. This game is just a lot of fun, and it does age like a fine wine. It does get better with time. But it's going to be a very unusual champion. Remember, we've had 2 years of ASL with Sulky winning. We had a couple people bubble up before that, and it was a little bit more competitive. And then we had a whole era of Flash, which honestly, it feels pretty far away now. It feels very much like in the rearview mirror, so to speak. But out of these guys, I don't know who's going to take it. I feel like Snow is kind of overdue for an ASL championship. But we'll see, man. Personally, as a fan of Bizu, as a guy that grew up watching him play PvZ, this is a player that basically taught me and everybody else how to actually beat Zergs. There was a whole period, I don't know how old school you are when you're watching this, But remember when everybody went 2 gateway versus Zerg? That was like, everything was 2 gate. And you would rush, and then, you know, eventually the Zergs got good enough that you would 2 gate, but you would never kill them with it. And then you would like try to take a base, and you would probably die to Mutalisks or something else. He's the guy that figured out how to safely fast expand every time, forge fast expand. He does do gateway fast expand a lot now. And then really take what looked like a Zerg strength, which was the fact that, you know, you have overlords everywhere. You can, you get vision of everything. You can see DTs with them. He took that and flipped it on its head and said, I'm going to go hunt for your overlords. I'm going to punish you. Then I'm going to have DTs go around the map and take stuff out. He really revolutionized the whole matchup in a way that few have ever revolutionized a matchup. So as a fan, I'm rooting for Bizu, but I think any of these guys could take it. Maybe the craziest one is Barracks. Anyways, I'm going to be streaming this whole month, so if you want to pop by and talk to me about the season of ASL, yeah, feel free. It's twitch.tv/tastelesstv. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments about this round of 4. I'm looking forward to putting it out. We did have a week off, in case you were wondering where these games were. It is Chuseok out here, Korean Thanksgiving, so all the players are with their families. Yeah, like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video. Bye-bye.